Hey all you cool cats and kittens, it's your favorite history teacher back at you again with another historical video. And today we are moving on to a new revolution, and not necessarily a new revolution, but more ideas of revolution. And we're going to start back in France. We're going to skirt a little bit forward and talk about the revolutions of 1830 and 1848 across Europe. So let's get into the mix. Why don't we? All right. So this is kind of a two title note day. I would say write this Revolutions in Europe and Latin America. This is chapter 4 title. So I would write that in like the bigger part of your upper margin on top of your paper. So Revolution of Europe in Europe and Latin America, chapter 4. And today we're going to talk about the revolutions of 1830 and 1848. So going a little bit forward, if you remember yesterday, we ended with the French Revolution, 1815. Napoleon abdicates the throne. He's sent to that little itty bitty small island in the Atlantic, far, far away. And the Congress of Vienna is out trying to restore the monarchy, restore hereditary monarchs back on the throne that the French Revolution unseated, mainly in Spain, Portugal, and parts of Italy. And they also want to make buffer states stronger countries to surround France, to keep France from expanding ever again. So let's get into it. Why don't we? I should have probably did this first because now I gotta wait for it to load. So yeah, revolutions of 1830 and 1848. Da, 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 da. I think we're good. We can move on to the next one, right? That was your warm-up. All right, so objectives for this lecture, you'll be able to analyze how the spirit of reform spread in 1830 and explain how revolutions that surged throughout France and the rest of Europe. Remember that revolutionary plague. All right, so we back in France, y'all. In the Congress of Vienna, like I just briefly mentioned, they restored hereditary monarchs. So the Bourbon family, Bourbon, whichever way you want to pronounce that. Louis the 18th, remember he's the brother of the king who lost his head to the French throne. Unlike his predecessors, he issued another constitution. And it was called the Charter of French Liberties. And that created a two-house legislature and allowed limited freedom of the press. However, the king still had much power, but Louis the 18th is gonna die, 1824, so only 9 years. But his younger brother, Charles the 10th, he did not take Louis as his name. Charles the 10th inherited the throne. Charles was much like his predecessors in believing in absolutism, absolute monarchy, and he rejected the very idea of the Charter of French Liberties. So, 1830, Charles is going to suspend the legislature, limit the right to vote, and restrict the press. What a nice guy. Remember, this is Louis the 18th. You remember he came back to France after Napoleon lost in, what was it, 1812? 1813, and so when he went back to that island of Elba, they brought this guy back. Remember, I don't know if I've mentioned this before, but if you were big, like husky, oversized, that just was a sign of your wealth and your stature, because rich people ate all that they could. So we're in France, where after the French Revolution. And we're in a time in France where, you know, there's an absolute monarch restricting freedoms, restricting liberties. What you think's gonna happen? So liberals and radicals forcefully responded to the king's challenge. In Paris, they threw up barricades across the narrow streets, and from behind, the citizens would throw rocks at the soldiers. So barricades is something we will see when I show Les Mis in class. And barricades is like your barricade, like if, you know, barricading a door, you block the entryway into the door, so they're going to barricade the streets. So they're going to throw anything and everything they have from their apartment buildings, their houses, throw it down the streets, and all that clutter, all the debris is going to build a high barricade. Within days, rebels held control of the city. The revolutionary tricolor flag stood atop the Notre Dame Cathedral, and Charles X abdicated and fled to England. I almost said France. This is called the July Revolution. The July Revolution. This is the Notre Dame Cathedral. It went up in flames not that long ago. I think like a year or two ago. The ceiling, there was a fire there. And if you want to know how massive it is, put in perspective, this is a normal human being size. This is probably a taller gentleman right here. But yeah, that thing goes up and up. All right, so the citizen king. With the king gone, radicals wanted to create a republic. Moderate liberals suggested a constitutional monarchy. They chose Louis Philippe. He was cousin of Charles X, and in his youth, he supported the revolution of 1789. Test question. Louis Philippe was called the citizen king because he owed his throne to the people. The people chose him. That's why he's called the citizen king. Citizens chose their king. And so it was on him to be better. So he got along with the liberal bourgeoisie. Under Louis Philippe, the upper bourgeoisie actually prospered. He extended suffrage, but only to France's wealthy elite. The vast majority still couldn't vote, and the king's other policies favored the middle class at the workers' expense. So if you're not for the workers are going to go up in revolt. That's our guy, Louis Philippe. He looks totally different than any other king you've ever seen from France. All right, now we're going to, it's too short, to Belgium, go to the north. So Prince Clemens von Metternich of Austria, leader of the, you could call it the Congress of Vienna. And he said, when France sneezes, Europe catches cold. And that's kind of like that spread of the revolutionary ideas. So when France has revolutionary ideas, sneezes, you know, when you sneeze about 100 miles an hour, and you spread your little droplets, and Europe catches the coronavirus. So this is a test question. Explain what he meant by this. So hopefully, so like whenever France has like revolutionary ideas, Europe tends to catch on later. Most uprisings are going to be suppressed by the military, but rebels are going to make some changes. Even if they failed, the ideas of revolution frightened rulers badly enough to encourage reform. In 1815, the Congress of Vienna, remember, united Austrian Netherlands, which is today Belgium, and the Kingdom of Holland under the Dutch king. So this country, although they weren't really separate, they had to follow the lead of the new Dutch king. And remember, the Congress of Vienna, well, they wanted to create a strong barrier to prevent French expansion. However, the Belgians aren't going to like this. Them and the Dutch had two different languages. Belgium, B, was Catholic. D, the Dutch, Kingdom of Holland, they were Protestant. B, Belgium, their economy was based on manufacturing. Holland, or the Dutch, D, they based their economy on trade. So differences in economies, differences in religion, as we already know, Catholics and Protestants, they don't like each other. So this is Austria, Netherlands. To the south is France. And here you have the Kingdom of Holland up in here. So all this became one country. So from about 1815 to 1839. So revolutionary ideas spread. In 1830, the Paris uprising sneezed and sparked it in Belgium. Students and workers threw up barricades in Brussels, the capital of Belgium, Brussels. Britain and France believed they would both benefit from the separation of both Belgium and Holland, so they both support Belgian demands for independence. In 1831, Belgium became an independent state with a liberal constitution. So July 21st, 1831 commemorates when the Belgians said enough to the Dutch. Enough with the wooden shoes, enough tulips, and they celebrated their independence by doing what they do better than anyone. They had a beer festival. Lovely stuff. All right, so switch over to Poland. And nationalists in Poland staged an uprising in 1830 as well. Remember, nationalism, love for one's country. So people who love their country. Unlike the Belgians, the Polish were unsuccessful in winning independence. In the late 1700s, Russia, Austria, and Prussia had previously divided Poland. The Polish people thought the COV, Congress of Vienna, would grant them independence in 1815. Instead, they gave most of Poland's control over to Russia. Remember Napoleon's continental system? Alexander I and Napoleon made a deal that they would split up they would split up Poland, or they would split up Europe, and on that side is Poland. Poland, remember, is the eye of the ball. Every Russian leader wants a piece of Poland. In 1830, students and army officers and landowners rose up in revolt, and they failed to gain support. So they would be crushed by Russian forces, and survivors are now going to flee to Western Europe and the U.S. to keep their hope for freedom alive. So watch me Rev, watch me Olution, watch me Whip, watch me Dang. Oh yeah. Let's just say I made this song, the slide title and that song was out. Anywho, during the 1840s, discontent would spread again in France. Hey, like that's something new. Radicals will secretly meet to create this desired republic they've always wanted. Liberals will denounce Louis Philippe's government for corruption and call for expanded suffrage. France was filled with more discontent come by the end of the decade due to a recession. Remember, recession is a shrinking of the economy. So when there's not a lot of goods out to buy, factories will shut down, people will lose their jobs, poor harvests are going to cause prices of bread to go up, newspapers are going to blame government officials, and France was ready for another revolution. Bet you can't read like me. So February 1848, the government is going to take steps to silence critics and prevent public meetings, so the angry crowds took to the streets. Now, this is called the February Days. During the February Days, the people overturned carts, paved stones, and toppled trees to block the streets of Paris again. Church bells rang, and the men and women on these barricades sang La Marseillaise. And a number of demonstrators clashed with troops and were often killed because, hey, military soldiers are kind of better than just a ragtag bunch of people saying freedom. So as turmoil spread, Louis Philippe is going to realize he let the people down. So he abdicates. And then there's going to be a group of liberal, radical, and socialist leaders, and they're going to proclaim themselves the Second Republic of France. The First Republic, if you can't remember, is from 1792 to 1804, before Napoleon claimed himself as emperor. So from the beginning of the Second Republic, differences divided the new government. There were middle-class liberals, wanted moderate public reform, Socialists wanted far-reaching social and economic change and forced the government to set up national workshops to provide jobs for the unemployed. That sounds good, right? Unemployed people go learn these trades so that they can find work or create their own business. All right. But there's a retaliation. In June 1848, upper middle class interests won control of the government. And remember, they probably have ties to the nobility and ties to the military. So they proclaimed that these national workshops were a waste of money, and they shut them down. Further frustration will follow, and the workers again took to the streets. The liberal bourgeoisie actually turned violent against these protesters, and peasants, fearing for the loss of their lands to the socialists, fought the rioting workers. Everyone's fighting each other. At least 1,500 people will die before the government had to come in and crush the rebellion, saying this is getting out of hand. This is called the June Days. And the June Days left a bitter legacy. The middle class both feared and distrusted socialists, while the working class had a deep hatred against the bourgeoisie. So there you go. That's an overturned cart, FYI. So another leader. By the end of 1848, the National Assembly, hey, the National Assembly is still around. Yay, yay. It's what, 1791? They stuck around since then. Dominated by those who wanted to restore order, issued another constitution for the Second Republic. This constitution created a president and a one-house legislature and gave the vote to all adult men, which is the widest suffrage given in the world at that time. And at that time, there are 9 million French adults. And now they can vote, compared to from before under Louis Philippe, only 200,000. 9 million? 200,000. That's 888.8 million more people to vote. They're going to hold elections, and a guy named Louis Napoleon, nephew of Napoleon Bonaparte, will overwhelmingly win. And he was liked by attracting the working class which was his platform of caring for poverty, and his name was linked with order and past glory. He's going to win over much of the conservatives who, had sway in the government, and they say vote for this guy. So that's our president, Louis Napoleon. Again, more different than what we've seen from rulers of France. And France knows how to choose them. They really do, because once in office, is it Louis Napoleon? I forget. Napoleon, yeah, Louis Napoleon. LN. Louis Napoleon used his position of power as a stepping stone for more, because they need more. In 1852, he declared himself emperor, calling himself Napoleon III. It ended the short-lived republic. Like his uncle, he held a plebiscite to win public approval of his seizure of power. 90% supported his push to set up the Second Empire. Many thought a monarchy was more stable and he would restore France back to its glory days under Napoleon. And he ruled at a time of economic prosperity. The bourgeoisie will benefit in time, though. He would embark on expansion dreams that would soon come crashing down. So, Emperor. Thanks for sneezing, Metternich says to France. So the events helped bring clarity to the people of Europe. Middle-class liberals wanted a greater share of political power and protection of the basic rights for all men. Workers wanted relief from the Industrial Revolution issues, and nationalists from all classes wanted to throw off foreign rule. So in the Austrian Empire, the big Habsburg Empire, the revolts are going to break out in the major cities. And even though Metternich censored the press, books would be smuggled into universities in the empire, and students are going to demand change. If you haven't seen a correlation of how all these revolutions start, they usually start with students who are, somewhat educated, and the workers who are demanding rights, demanding equal pay, demanding more pay for the hours that they work. So that tends to be a common theme in history where students who are usually liberal, kind of radical, and workers, they usually start these, okay? So when workers joined with the students in the streets of Vienna, Metternich resigned and fled in disguise. And this is a drawing of Metternich, cartoon portrayal, Pinocchio, fleeing Vienna. Temporary hashtag gains. Revolution continued to spread in Budapest, not Budapest, Budapest. Hungarian nationalists led by a guy named Louis Kossuth demanded for an independent government, an end to serfdom, and a written constitution to protect basic rights. Now that sounds just fine. In Prague, Czechs are going to make similar demands. Overwhelmed by the pressure, Austrians were going to have to give in. However short-lived, though, Austrian troops gained back control of Vienna, Budapest, and Prague in all. Shut them down. So here's Hungary. This is the Austrian Empire, FYI, the Habsburg Empire, Czech Republic, Austria, Slovenia, parts of Italy, Bosnia, Croatia, all of this, all of that, okay? And we have a big empire, like, I don't know why I'm thinking of Alexander the Great. You know, when you're further away from the leaders of the country, the leaders of the empire, you know, stuff out here, you can kind of get away with things. But, you know, Austrians wanted to, you know, exert their power. All right, so you don't mess with the Pope, El Papa. I think that's how you say Pope in Spanish. Uprisings are going to spread to Italy. Nationalists wanted to end Habsburg domination and set up a constitutional government. Remember, this is part of, this is Lombardy and Venezia, or Venetia, Venice. Okay, this is northern Italy right here. And this has always been dominated by the Austrians for a very, 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 very long time. So it's only right that these nationalists who are nationalistic towards Italy or their kingdom in Italy in Venetia or Lombardy, and they want to kick out the Habsburgs. So from Venice in the north to Naples in the south, Italians are going to set up independent republics. Revolutionaries even expelled the Pope from Rome and created a nationalist government. However, we're still, Europe is still mainly Catholic, so European forces are going to come together and react to that real quick. Austrian troops ousted new governments in northern Italy, and the French army is going to restore the Pope in Rome. And in Naples, local rulers canceled the reforms they had reluctantly accepted. So, again, not that great of a revolution going on in Italy, not that great of a revolution going on in Austria, not that great of a revolution going on in Poland. The only one that seemed to have worked was the one in Belgium. Italy is a hot mess, and we will come back to Italy in the near future. Das Boot. All right, Germany. So university students are going to demand national unity and liberal reforms. Economic hard times and a potato famine brought peasants into this struggle. In Prussia, liberals forced King Frederick William IV to agree to a constitution written by an elected assembly. Less than a year, he's going to dissolve that assembly, acting like Charles II over here from England. Throughout 1848, or was it Charles I? Throughout 1848, delegates from the German states are going to meet in Frankfurt, aptly called the Frankfurt Assembly. And divisions are going to come about whether or not Germany should be a republic or a monarchy, and whether or not to include Austria in a united German state. Because in Austria they speak German. So, and if you thought Italy was a hot mess, this is Germany. And all this black is the border of Germany, right? And all these different colors are all these different kingdoms in Germany. The former Holy Roman Empire, okay? Yeah, All this different colors, hot mess, even a hotter mess. Hot German summer. That's our boy Freddie Willie. Well, and we'll come back to him. In the end, the Frankfurt Assembly offered the crown to Prussia's Frederick William IV to lead a unified Germany. Remember, he is Prussian. If you look at this map, Prussia is right here. Okay, this little part, this is Prussia. And this is Germany, or what they want to be Germany. The conservative king rejected this offer because it didn't come from the other German princes. Leaders of all these different, I'm pointing at my screen again. Leaders of all these different colored kingdoms. Their offer did not come from them. The offer came from the people. And he called it, in German, the gutter. So, the rejection, people. So, by 1850, rebellions have failed. Rulers will use military force or governments. Another reason why they failed is because revolutionaries couldn't gain enough support for their revolutions. Constitutions they liked were soon replaced. And soon enough, liberalism, nationalism, socialism would win not through revolutions, but by political activity. And that concludes this lecture for today. I just need to stop right there. So hopefully you enjoyed that. It was kind of a roller coaster ride, wouldn't you agree? And I wanted to talk about these revolutions because when we talk about World War I and nationalism and imperialism, these backgrounds of people hating each other and all these revolutionary liberal ideas and getting rid of the monarchy, it's a good backstory to have a good grasp. And when we talk about the unification of Italy and the unification of Germany, these ideas, these people, these characters, if you want to call it a story, are going to come back. So hopefully you guys did enjoy that. If you did, go ahead and smash that like button. And yeah, I forgot. Your homework is page 153, 3 through 5. And yeah, test is coming up soon, people. So yeah, like I said, if you did like it, hit the like button, whatever you want to do, whatever your prerogative. And as always, stay safe, wash your hands,